right, psych students. Today we're going to finish Catwoman and the Penguin. To help me do that, I also have my cat Mira here. She's just chilling. She's just chilling. She was like up here for all of my World War II Rise of Hitler video that I just did. I'm sure it was cute, but I couldn't see her from behind. So we already looked at Catwoman in the pre, so hopefully you watched those episodes and you've been able to identify whether or not she's truly in love with Batman and maybe why. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, right? I'm sorry, you shed. Not as much as Rollo, though. Not even close. Rollo sheds way too much. So hopefully you had the chance to do that. If not, this is going to kind of spoil it for you. So, what is the psychology of attraction, specifically between Catwoman and Batman? Well, number one is confidence is attractive. I was just explaining to my World Civ kids how somebody could find Hitler attractive. Like, well, if you really think about it, especially the female gender, but male gender as well, confidence is attractive. It really is. I mean, you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who is constantly plagued with self-doubt. It's exhausting. Okay? There needs to be some level of confidence. I mean, everybody has their insecurities, but I knew a guy who, if his lady didn't text him every, if there was like a 30-minute gap of no text, he'd be losing his mind, thinking that he had done something wrong, that they were going to break up, right? That's very exhausting for the other person, right? That's not healthy. Don't chew on the cord, Mira, you idiot. It's not to eat. I'm sorry, you can't bite my camera cord. What an idiot. Yeah, you're eyeing it, and I see you, and I don't trust you. She's trouble. She's cute trouble, right? You can see her. She's cute trouble, but she's trouble nonetheless. So confidence is attractive when women, not wind, tend to like dominant, take charge men. There's a stereotype of especially high school girls liking the bad boys for a reason. And that's because this is true. Bad boys tend to have a dominant, take charge personality. And a lot of women, it's kind of, you're going to have to like check off your your easily offended box, because you need to understand I'm dealing in majorities here. The majority of women, you're like, well, I'm not like that. Well, good for you. Okay. There are obviously exceptions. But generally speaking, the psychology of a woman is typically drawn towards take charge men, traditionally. For example, Bruce Wayne versus Clark Kent. Nobody ignores Bruce. Right or wrong, a brute may seem more capable of performing a gentle act than a gentleman seems able to succeed at a brutal one. So it seems much more likely and possible for a woman to change the man who is a little bit rough around the edges, to and they seem more likely to do a nice act. I mean, just because you're rough around the edges doesn't mean you can't do nice things. That seems much easier, more probable, and more exciting than a boring guy who is never going to do anything bad. And if your house was under attack and you needed, Bruce Wayne, if you didn't know Clark Kent was Superman, Bruce Wayne would seem more like the guy that would actually stand up and like beat the crap out of that guy that was breaking into your house. And Clark Kent seems like more of the guy that would call 911, right? You see what I'm saying? So a brute may seem more capable of performing a gentle act than a gentle man seems able to succeed at a brutal one. She's so cute. If she wasn't laying on top of my phone, I would take a picture, but I can't. So women tend to be more understanding. Again, take a chill pill. Tend to be more sympathetic, understanding, sensitive, compassionate, warm, tender, eager to soothe feelings, and loving towards children. Not their husbands, but towards children, right? So, it is a stereotype. It is a stereotype that has some certain, it has a lot of fact in it, actually. You look at my parents, you look at the average male-female relationship, that is definitely the case. Even with me and my son and my wife, you can already tell that is the case. Which is honestly perfectly, I don't actually see anything wrong with that at all. However, later in life, we see these roles mix a little bit. So men tend to be more harsh and judgmental and angry, stereotypically. And so later in life, we find that they kind of get a little bit closer. Men become more sensitive than before, and women become more assertive. And I do think men clearly are sensitive, because if you remember back to early in the class, we looked at a statistic where men post breakups usually actually have a much higher rate of suicide after a breakup, because of, I guess they're just sensitive. I don't know. But the women aren't killing themselves, the men are. I don't know. It's an interesting study. And there was one year that Miss Adkins challenged that, and I was like, with a student, not me. I was like, I looked up the lady that did that study, that's her profession. That's what her doctorate is in. That's what she does, is basically discovering, everything in the realm of that statistic. So I don't know. High school home ec teacher, professional woman with several doctorates, who specializes in this. You tell me. So it is at this point that men and women, later in age, begin to look long term. Typically, people date the bad boys and girls when they're looking for short-term relationships, or during their more immature stages, like high school. That's why it seems like high school girls are so drawn to the bad boy, and guys are more drawn to the women that are a little bit more flashy and revealing, because when you're in your immature stages of life, you are looking for that short-term fling, right? And I do feel like the age of which that takes place is getting older and older as the decades go by, which I don't think is a good thing at all, especially for the health of your children, because the longer you wait to have kids, the more risk factors there are for them and the mom, but mainly the kid. So with the maturity of age, men and women begin to search for someone they could spend their life with, aka Clark Kent wins in the long run. I was always the nice guy in school, which is why I barely had any girlfriends at all. And the longest relationship I had before Sarah was 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. No, 3 weeks. Because I was a nice guy. Ladies, they were not interested in me. And although in middle school I was quite dorky looking, in high school I was not bad looking. I had a six-pack. I was on the swimming team. I mean, I wasn't bad looking. A lot skinnier than I am now, obviously. But it was more just the fact that I was shy, and I just didn't have the gumption to go up and talk. There were several points where I found out that certain girls had crushes on me, but I was I guess I just didn't believe that it was true, or I was just too whatever the case was, I just didn't do it, right? I was like, they're just going to go on a date with me and then realize I'm boring anyway, which is probably true. But in the long run, though, I ultimately value the long term more anyway, at a younger age, I was looking for that long-term relationship anyway. So, but as people get older, they're looking to settle down with somebody. They're going to want to find somebody that they can trust. And Clark Kent is someone you can trust. Like, Clark Kent is never going to betray you. Superman, he's Clark Kent. Basically saying the good guy is usually the one that that somebody settles down with. And not to say that a lot of people that are the bad boy or the bad girl end up becoming the good. They end up settling down and mellowing as well. But that to say, nice guys and girls tend to have less sexual partners. Part of being nice is the fact that they'll place manners, respect, conversation, and concern ahead of passion. When someone goes from the bad person, it is typically for the instant sexual gratification. Once again, though, confidence is attractive. And I think, Batman and Catwoman are both the bad boy, the bad girl. And so they're attracted to each other because they're both confident, they're both similar, they're both kind of that rebellious bad boy, bad girl. They are not Clark Kent. And because they have that similarity, I think they are drawn to each other. I don't typically find that a bad boy is going to be drawn to a bad girl and a bad girl drawn to a good boy. Rarely. It does happen, but rarely. Most of the time, it's going to be bad boy and bad girl together. Especially when they go later in life. If they were a bad boy, bad girl earlier in life, they're probably going to want to find somebody that was similar to the way they were when they were younger, even though now when they're older, they've matured. If that makes sense. Once again, confidence is attractive, yes. So can Batman even love? Bruce Wayne's very capable of falling in love. You might even say it's his Achilles heel, that it's his weakness, almost like his kryptonite. He can have the greatest technology, the greatest weapons in the world, but his heart has no shield. His heart can be broken. If you've seen The Dark Knight Rises, you know that love really is his greatest weakness. So if you're Bruce Wayne, falling in love is a very dangerous thing because it's possible the person that you fall in love with will get hurt or will hurt you, right, as a direct function of that person's affiliation with you. It's kind of like that superhero, like Superman doesn't want to date Mary Jane because she could get hurt because it was bad, all that stuff. Now, what is the psychology of love? What makes love? What is love? Well, we have the triangle, right? I often say that love is a three-legged table. The table simply cannot stand on its own with only two legs. You have to have all three. And I know that a lot of people in high school, even in college, we tend to think that love is this feeling. Love is not a feeling. It certainly can be part of it, but it's not exclusively just that fluffy feeling you get when you're with somebody new and exciting that you really like. So it is a triangle of intimacy, commitment, and passion. Intimacy is like friendship, okay? I know that the friend zone thing is like a joke and everything, but to be honest, when you get later in life, when you're looking for that mate, friendship is actually a good place to be, especially to start out. Because here's the thing. Regardless of friend zone, like if you're their friend, either they're attracted to you or they're not, regardless if you're their friend or not. So you being in the friend zone, either you are never going to be in the friend zone or you are always going to be in the friend zone. Either they find you attractive or they don't. So I don't really think the friend zone is really something you need to worry about, especially when you're not in high school and it's all a bunch of quick flings that aren't going to go anywhere. Which, by the way, you're like, well, some people. Yes, there are some people, and guess what? Divorce rates with high school sweethearts are catastrophically higher. So I'm sorry, but you're wasting your time with your high school relationships. It's just the truth. Sorry. It's probably not going to last. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because it's the truth. Anyway, intimacy, friendship. You don't really need to be worried about the friendship zone, to be honest with you. In fact, my wife and I were such good friends before we started dating that when I asked her out, I kind of thought we already were. Because I wanted to build that non-physical relationship before we got a physical. It's a good foundation to have. But Love cannot stand on just friendship alone. You also have to have passion. Passion is kind of like that fluffy feeling. It's more of the sexual, primal passion, right? You have a passion for that person. It's not necessarily just a physical, you want to get laid. It's that you want to have an intimate moment with that person because of the passion you have for them, right? So I don't know, maybe I'm different than other guys, but that's kind of how I always viewed sex. Like, it's not really a thing that you just do casually. It has to be with somebody that, that it's not about the physical, it's about the emotional connection you're making with that person. The passion that you bring to the table is your affection and emotional passion that you have for that person. I know that a lot of guys are different than me, but again, I'm definitely the Clark Kent, um, even still today. As much as maybe sometimes I don't want to be, I definitely am. Sometimes I really wish I wasn't, though. Being the nice guy just definitely has its negatives. You got to be careful. People like to walk over the nice guy. You kind of have to develop a thick skin to certain cases. That to say, I'm definitely a lot meaner than I used to be, even as a teacher. And the third, and probably the most vital of the three, is commitment. It's very important because a relationship on just passion and friendship alone is not enough, because you're going to have days where you're not feeling the passion. You're going to have days all friends fight. You're going to have days where those two are lacking, and you're going to need that third table leg, commitment, to hold it together. I think probably a big reason why most divorces happen is because people don't have the right understanding of what love is. They don't understand this third leg to the table that is commitment. You have to have it, because I put it this way, ideally you would always love that person based on this definition. But there will be days that you'll wake up and you'll think, man, I really don't like that person. Does that make sense? Because love is where you care enough about somebody to where your temporary unhappiness with them, that you value that commitment so much that your temporary unhappiness with them, it's like, yeah, I'm mad at you, but I'm not going to leave because I made a promise and I remember my commitment and I value that commitment and the love that goes with that commitment, right? I'm not going to leave. And I think that that's probably the leg of the table that is most often forgotten. If you're getting into a marriage and you don't understand the commitment aspect of it, it's doomed. Because I'm going to tell you, marriage is very hard. It is one of the hardest things you will ever do. Simple. You need to have that commitment or it will not last. That to say, just commitment and friendship alone isn't enough either. You will have a lot of marital problems if you are not on the same page sexually. You have to be able to have those conversations. There will be a lot of tension if you do not keep the passion going. And that's more than just sexual. That also includes going on dates and keeping that passion, that fluffy feeling alive, because it will fade and you have to be careful. And I'm finding that, especially in the coronavirus, that's a very hard table to keep up. Just because you're just like, you're crazy. Anyway. I'm sorry, did I offend you? And then also friendship. Passion and commitment alone is a very hollow relationship. I feel like the friendship is the heart. The friendship, the intimacy is the heart of the relationship. The passion is the fire, and the commitment is what binds them together. You need all three. That's what love is, essentially. It's not just a feeling. is actually my favorite work of art of Batman and Catwoman together. Jim Lee is a very talented artist. So Selina Kyle is a strong human being. The cat identity becomes a symbol of her strength. So as Catwoman, she becomes her own totem animal. And what do you know? So does Batman kind of do the same thing. Batman crosses the cat's path at a time when she needs a focal point to help her fill herself with the strength that she already has inside. The sight of Batman fighting in the street is to Selina what a bat flying into Wayne Manor once was to Bruce. Seeing a man fight dressed as his own totem in a costume that lets him wear his strength on the outside, she knows that she could too, right? They complement one another. They're similar to one another. And that's really a very key part of love. I know that they say opposites attract, but that's really actually not true. It's just you're much more likely to notice your differences than your similarities. Like my wife and I are very different people. She's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. She likes all the stereotypically girly movies. I hate them. I like all the stereotypically manly movies. She's not a huge fan. She likes some of them though, because I do have a very wide scope of what I like. And that's the way it is. But we, on the similarities though, we grew up in relatively the same socioeconomic class, the same religion, same political beliefs, even similar sports teams. Like, we are very similar where it counts, right? In the way that we view the world. The superficial things like similarities with your favorite TV show are pretty unimportant, to be honest. So why do they like each other? Birds of a feather flock together while opposites attract. The whole opposite attract thing is actually not true. People are more similar than what they think. They just notice the differences more. Normal, I don't understand that second bullet point. Normal woman wouldn't understand. Oh, okay. Normal women, that's what it's supposed to say, wouldn't understand Batman's true self. So like whenever he inevitably would reveal that he's Batman to her, that would probably create a lot of tension. And it usually does in the movies and such, comic books. But with Catwoman, it's like, well, she knew him as Batman first. So that's not going to create drama. And they do the same thing. They're like, the thing that defines Batman the most, Bruce Wayne the most, is Batman. And that's what Catwoman likes about him the most, right? So it would make sense, right? Henry's having an episode. It would make sense they would go together because the thing that would probably create tension between Batman and another woman is actually what draws them close together. So Bruce often dates Selina in the comic books. They go out and do things together. She goes to concerts, snuggles by the fireplace, and goes to dinner parties with him. Selina is usually crushing on Batman first too. Rooftop sex is not off the agenda either. In the end, both in masks and out, across all comics, cartoons, and movies, they end up together. They usually end up getting married. In the golden age of comics, they end up getting married. In the silver age, I think they end up getting married. In the recent comic books, they're engaged or married. I think they're engaged right now. And in the Dark Knight trilogy, they get married. So, I mean, or at least we're led to believe they get married. So, I mean, they always end up together, and I think they really are drawn to each other because they're similar to each other in the most core essence. Okay? It's kind of like when I say that me and my wife have the same religion, political beliefs, all that. That's very important. We create a lot of arguments if we weren't, especially in the modern era. But it's not usually like that. But Batman and Catwoman have that very important aspect of each other that's very similar. Right, so now the Penguin, you looked at him kind of looking for his disorders. I know that was probably really challenging because, I mean, you really kind of have to watch the whole movie to get his diagnosis. And even then, it's a little hard to catch on to. But I did what I could. I did the best I could with what these NTII days give me. So the Penguin in the comic books and the shows is sane In fact, even in the comic books, he goes to Blackgate Penitentiary. He doesn't go to Arkham Asylum. He's really just kind of a mob boss. Penguin does have a huge Napoleon complex driven by his perceived social and physical handicaps to inflate himself in other areas of life. He overcompensates for feelings of inferiority by becoming self-centered, disdainful, and domineering towards others. I tried to find a clip from Batman Returns that illustrated this point, and that to say he does not expect attention, positive attention, because of his deformities and him being him. He doesn't expect attention, so he desperately seeks attention. If you really pay attention to all of Penguin's plots, except for in the Gotham show, he's actually a lot more developed in the Gotham show, and psychotic in the Gotham show. But anyway, in the comic books, and in the cartoons, and in the movies, if you really pay attention to all the Penguin's motivations, it's usually to get attention, right? In the Batman Returns, he wants to, in the clip I showed you, he specifically says, all he ever wanted was to basically be recognized, and that he didn't expect to be recognized because of what he looks like. That's really what his whole character premise is in the movie. He gets distracted a little bit because that one character, I forget his name, the businessman he brings into the cellar there. It's actually the penguin exhibit at the local zoo. But he convinces him to maybe become mayor for part of the movie, but really the penguin's main plot is to get people to recognize him and to get attention, and to, of course, get revenge on the firstborn kids of Gotham. So his diagnosis is histrionic personality disorder. He's desperately trying to seek attention, and will go to dangerous measures to get there for sure. Treatment would be psychotherapy. That should do the trick. So that is the Penguin. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's the last thing for the Penguin. Okay, so that leaves one man left, and that is the Joker. So let's introduce him, shall we? All right, so his first name is unknown to us. We don't know his name. Now, obviously, in the Joker movie, it's Arthur Fleck. And I personally don't really care for giving the Joker name. I like the mysterious nature of it. In other iterations, his name is Jack Napier. Like in the Batman 1989 movie, his name is Jack Napier, I believe. And the Killing Joke, his name is that. Yeah. But, that to say, his name is not really trustworthy. Like, you don't really know what is real. He could be lying. Like in the Joker movie, he's hallucinating a lot of things. You don't know what's real. And he was adopted, so you don't really know what his real name is. So first appearance is in Batman #1 in 1940, although he was just a gimmicky clown back then. A robber known as the Red Hood plunges into a chemical waste catch basin while escaping from Batman. The chemicals turn his hair green, his lips red, and his skin white. He becomes the Joker. That is all we know. And in some instances, that's not even his origin story. In some instances, like The Dark Knight, which is my favorite iteration of the character, as well as this comic book here, you don't know his origin. He's just some guy. You don't really know what happened to him. We can't trust anything the Joker tells us about his background because he lies. In some versions, he puts the makeup on himself, and he never fell into the acid. It's like we really don't know what his true origin is. He's a mystery. As the Joker says in The Killing Joke, and I think this quote embodies it perfectly, I'm not exactly sure what it is. Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. And I think that really embodies part of what makes the Joker so interesting is that you don't know his origin. This is kind of a cool moment in the comic book. It's talking about how when somebody sees something they love, their pupils dilate a little bit. And Batman's always talking about how the Joker's eyes, his pupils are always really small. and how whenever he looks at Batman, he notices the pupils dilate just a little bit. That's to say the Joker hates everything, but he does sort of like Batman. Creepy. So how he appears in comic books, the Joker has a lot of tools at his disposal. This is one of his victims. He has a gas, or like he can, in this instance, he had like a prick on his hand and he shook the guy's hand. He has a toxin which makes somebody die of laughter, and when they die, their face is frozen looking like that. He also has it in a gaseous state, his laughing gas. I don't really want to give anything away. This is pictures of the Killing Joke where he paralyzes Barbara Gordon and then takes photographs of her, while he doesn't show him obviously raping her, but it's very heavily implied. And then he parades Barbara, Batgirl's dad, James Gordon, through a carnival ride while showing pictures of the Joker raping his daughter. So not only is she paralyzed, but he was trying to prove that James Gordon, who was the best, a good man, he was trying to prove that a good man could be brought down to the Joker's level if he had a bad enough day. So what the Joker's doing is he's giving Gordon a horrible day, trying to prove that by doing this, Gordon will become just as evil as the Joker, which doesn't happen. But that's what he's trying to do. That to say, a lot of the Joker's plots center around him trying to prove that other people can be just as bad as him if they had a bad enough day like he did. Here he is in The Dark Knight Returns. This is what that scene in the Joker movie is based off of. In the movie, he just shoots a guy in the head. In the comic book, he slits this guy's throat with a broken bottle. He kisses a woman, giving her to where she laughs herself to death, and then he kills the host in some other way. Then he flies around on whatever this is and kills the entire audience with laughing gas. In this comic book, he's trying to get back his face, which he had cut off, and the GCPD had it on an icebox. So the Joker breaks into the GCPD, turns off the lights, snaps all of the police officers' necks while telling Gordon a joke, and then he leaves James Gordon alive so that whenever the lights turn on, all of his cops, the people that work for him, are dead. So that's pretty psychotic. So the Joker gets his face back while telling a joke to Gordon here and snapping all of the people he cares about, snapping their necks. It's pretty dark. The Joker is kind of the epitome of darkness and evil. So unlike you and I, the Joker seems to have no control. I just want to make sure I'm not spoiling anything. So yeah, I don't think that's spoiling anything. So unlike you and I, the Joker seems to have no control over his sensory information he's receiving from the outside world. He can only cope with it with that chaotic barrage of input by going with the flow. That's why some days he's a mischievous clown and others a psychopathic killer. He has no real personality. He creates himself every day. He sees himself as the Lord of Misrule and the world his theater of the absurd. So with that introduction, I just want to leave you with the Joker, and where does this lead us? Okay, good. And I want you to watch The Dark Knight for his diagnosis. I do. You can access it on Hulu. It's very easy to access. In fact, let's see if we can, show you how to find that. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. We're doing good. So the discussion questions will be based on The Dark Knight. So if you have Hulu, even the basic, like I have the cheap of Hulu, like where, it's just where it doesn't have ads. I don't have like the full-on, $80 a month. I have like the $5 or $6 a month version, right? So you have The Dark Knight available to you. If you don't have Hulu, create a free trial. Make up an email address. It is so easy. Or get a friend that has a Hulu subscription. Or rent it if you really want to. Or maybe your parents own it. It's a very popular movie, like a very popular movie. You should not have a hard time acquiring this movie. I'm so happy that Hulu put it on. So happy. So I really want you to watch that. I will give you through Monday to do that. Tuesday we're going to do a comic book assignment, but it's going to be very lax because, as it turns out, I have to post all of your grades by the end of the day on Wednesday, which means like I don't want to assign too many new assignments because it gives you less time to turn it in. But I'm still going to try it out just because I can't really tell you the way that we're grading this in these NTI days, but doing the assignment will help you a lot, but I don't think it will hurt you a lot if you don't do the comic book assignment. So I'll probably make it optional. But the Joker discussion is not optional. It will hurt your grade if you don't do it. So the end of the Batman notes, the verdict on the Batman, just because I want to get it done before we do the Joker, right? So as humanity above all else keeps us invested, the stories keep us thinking about keeps us thinking and keep evoking our emotions. Batman is still fun, and he probably always will be. So the verdict on the Batman about his sanity and any disorders, just kind of wrapping things up here. That has come up a lot over the years, whether Batman is insane, but in my opinion, he is not. He stands right out as having pushed himself as far as he can go because that's how he becomes the hero that he is, and he knows that if he took one more step, he'd fall into the abyss. And so he stands on the edge of the abyss. Stephen Englehart, comic book writer who majored in psychology in college. So the verdict continued by Dennis O'Neil, psychologist. There is a big difference between obsession and psychosis. Batman knows who he is and knows what drives him, and he chooses to fight it. He permits his obsession to be the meaning of his life because he cannot think of anything else better. He is also rife with natural gifts. He is possibly the only person in the world who could do what he is doing, but he is not for 1 second ignorant of why he is doing it or even what is unhealthy about it, nor is he ever out of control. I love this art. It's one of my favorite covers from Dark Knight's Metal. All right, so the verdict, Batman is a hero. We see him as someone we'd want on our side, a figure we'd love to call forth from the shadows and hurl at those that do us wrong. We see that part of ourselves that wants to scare off life's demons, life's bullies, and we like it. So to answer the question, he is not insane and does not have any disorders, especially not for the world of which he lives. And that is the words of the author, Travis Langley, on Batman and his psychology. He lives in one crazy world and we love what he does to the place. And I've pretty much already encapsulated that text reading into what I've said. So Batman has a thumbs up. He has no disorders. He is not insane. He is just a guy trying to do the right thing. He is very damaged, though. I think we can all agree with that. So that is the end of the Batman psychology. The only thing left is to diagnose Joker, watch The Dark Knight, and we have a little comic book activity. But again, I'm probably going to make that optional. So the Joker is going to give me an applause. Watch The Dark Knight. Be a good little student. You will not regret watching this movie unless you have terrible taste in movies. This is honestly an amazing film. It's so good. It is so good. Watch it. Do the diagnosis of the Joker, disorders, treatments. He does have a disorder, which means there's a treatment, and whether or not you think he's sane or insane. I have indeed dropped a lot of hints towards a lot of things. So we will finish the Joker when we come back, right? It's my book. So we will finish the Joker as the last bit. That will be probably the last of these videos. The discussion question for that video will be very short, as most of the discussion questions for the Joker will be on this one. Have a lovely day. Have a good weekend. Peace out.